But when you hear me say risk, it's not risk of getting to the. I don't care how many of my draft picks. At the end of the day, I don't care how many of Scott Hunter's draft picks, Jerry DiPoto's draft picks reach the major leagues. Now, again, generally speaking, sometimes it's really cool to go back and say, hey, the class of, 2000 whatever, like 16 of those 40 picks made the big leagues. Well, in general, that's pretty cool. That is pretty cool, and it suggests something positive. But, it's like I saw someone complain that the pick of Ford, complain about the pick in general of Ford and compared it to Alex Jackson the last time they took a prep player. Well, they're completely different players. And I think this person looked at Alex Jackson and saw, well, he was taking number 6, he was taken high, and he's a catcher, and boy, did he not work out. I mean, these two players could not be more different despite the fact that they're both high school players. They both bat right-handed, and they both played catcher in high school. Other than that, they could not be more different. Different brains, different humans. Second, Ford is a great athlete. Alex Jackson was not a great athlete. He had a little trouble taking to right field. And we're talking about Ford as a 60 runner with well above average lateral quickness. And again, we're going to get into Ford a little bit later. You're going to like some of the athletic traits that scouts talk about with him. And third, Jackson entered pro ball under the tutelage of what has since been long proven to be a very bad player development department, and one that never synced up with the scouting department, among the worst in baseball during the Jack Z tenure. And again, that organization did not infuse scouting and player development departments together very well. And to some extent, not really at all. There were conversations, but there just wasn't heavy involvement. It was Tom McNamara, Jack Zarenzik, and his scouts coming up with their board and making their picks. They were not in sync. This current group is doing that. Andy McKay is their player development director. He's right there with Scott Hunter and Jerry DiPoto, analyst scouts, discussing these players. McKay went out and saw some of these players. Visited with some of these players and their families. There's just no comparison at all. None whatsoever. There's no reason to think Harry Ford is going to go down the same road as Alex Jackson. Well, what if Harry Ford was taken by the Mets at 10? Are we making the Alex Jackson, Harry Ford comparison? Of course not. But because he was taken by Seattle, we get that. If you want to talk about prep catchers being a difficult demographic, fine, because it's true. Prep catchers, man, it's been tough. I remember, I believe it was 2009. There was a group of high school catchers. It was Will Myers, who was a high school catcher. It was Max Stassi. It was Luke Bailey, and I think maybe a fourth that were potential first-round picks. Now, Will Myers moved out from behind the plate immediately in pro ball. Bailey ended up getting hurt before the draft with Tommy John surgery. And he never panned out, and he's out of baseball. And Stassi's just now, like the last couple of years, like 12 years after his draft year, turning into a viable guy the last couple of years. He's been around, and he's been up and down in the minors and big leagues, and he's finally hitting. So it is a difficult demographic historically. But a couple of things that I would throw at that. If you're making a kind of like a checklist, like the good, the bad, the difficult demographics. What I would throw into that is player development has changed so much because the infusion of data into these conversations is going to help clubs avoid making significant mistakes. So I would throw that out there. The other thing is Harry Ford is a little different. Harry Ford is a little bit more like Will Myers in this way, where the club thinks of him a little bit more as a bat than they do as a catcher, even though he might end up catching. They might just leave him at catcher. I know they've already announced they're going to start. He's going to start back there. He's going to catch, to start his pro debut, and we'll just kind of go from there. When you believe in the bat, you're not drafting a catcher. You're drafting a bat that you think might catch, not a catcher that you hope can hit. There's a big difference between the two. Again, if you don't like the idea of a high school player taken and you're not talking about the specific player, then the conversation becomes why. And generally the answer to that question is, well, look where the team is in their rebuild. Don't you want to just get big league players, as often as possible, and not take the No, because then you leave talent on the board. How many times have I said that? Do not leave talent on the board. That doesn't always mean take the highest upside player, because you do have to mix risk in with your assessment of the player. But you do all that and then you come up with a board.